I'm making a video reply to ABC's request for information about my elderly mother who is in a nursing home in Montgomery, Alabama. My mother is 87 years old. Her name is Faye S. Lynch, and she is basically a prisoner in a nursing home in Montgomery, Alabama. This is a picture of my dear mother. She is a nursing home prisoner. Now there is a very good reason. I'll hold it steady so you can perhaps get a good shot of it. My mother and I have a very close relationship. At least we did before she had a stroke. I call it a stroke because she went unconscious and I had to call emergency 911. What happened is she basically, after becoming unconscious, she had to go into the hospital. She had to be treated, and then she was placed in a nursing home. However, in Alabama, the law does not allow anyone to appoint their own guardian and conservator. And the courts became involved in it, and my mother was declared a ward of the state of Alabama. Now, this was done by a probate court judge, the same judge that licenses automobile tax. And this is to me this seems a very corrupt system, because a person should be able to designate their own guardian and conservator. In fact, my dear mother, way back in 1995, when she was perfectly healthy and okay, she designated me as, she gave me a durable power of attorney, and said that she wanted me to be her guardian and conservator should she ever become incapacitated. But this was not done. The court became involved with it because she was in a nursing home. And what they basically did was appoint non-relative lawyers, strangers who we didn't even know, to be her guardian and conservator. Now, why do they do this in Alabama? They do it because Alabama is a poor state. Alabama does not have enough money to run its elderly care system. So, by appointing a court-appointed guardian and conservator, they essentially can take power and control of elderly people's lives. They can essentially make them non-citizens, essentially slaves of the state. Now, the reason I call it slaves is because by having power and control over the elderly when they're incapacitated, they control all their money and all their assets. So essentially, everything was taken control of by the state. So my mother, was married to Lieutenant Colonel Leonard P. Lynch, who was the same officer who was in charge of the National Guard troops in the Selma to Montgomery March. They essentially took control of everything that my mother had, and all of her income comes from the federal government. So my mother is in a good situation as far as benefits are concerned, because the federal government pays for everything. But because the state of Alabama does not have money to finance its elderly care system, they are able to raid the estates of elderly people and take power and control of everything. So my mother was made a target because she was the widow of a much honored and decorated military officer. So they prey upon people like this who've given their whole lives for their country. They prey upon these people who are widows of veterans because they're well off benefit wise, and they raid their estates. They essentially do what is a financial rape of elderly people, and they warehouse and make them prisoners in these nursing homes, in these concrete cubicle block structures, where my mother is now a prisoner behind electric doors with 24/7 guards to keep the people locked up inside there as prisoners. My mother hasn't done anything. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't committed any crime. Her only crime is that she grew old and unable to take care of herself. And even though she has family members who love her very much and who she specified and said it was her desire to be guardian and conservator for her should anything ever happen to her, the courts have come along and said, no, 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 we're almighty, we're God. We know what is best for your mother, for this elderly person. Her children, her adult children, who are competent and perfectly responsible and able to make decisions about what should happen to her, are not going to be the ones that are going to be her guardian and conservator. No, the probate court justice in Montgomery, Alabama, appointed non-relative lawyers to be her guardian and conservator. So this is very unjust. This is preying upon and exploiting the elderly. This is making prisoners and virtual slaves of the elderly. And it is very unjust that this happened in my mother's situation. My mother is a very loving and caring person. And the relationship between myself and my mother was a very good relationship. It was a relationship based on love, based on care, based on goodwill, based on mutual respect for each other. And this love, which my mother engendered in all her children, the courts come along and they say love is not a factor. It doesn't matter if you love your mother. It doesn't matter if you love your parents. The state knows best. The state is better able to make decisions about the health care and well-being of a person's mother who they love very much. Well, this is totally unjust. And if this has happened to me, it's probably happened to many, many, many other people in Montgomery, Alabama. You know, Montgomery, Alabama has a reputation for being prejudiced towards black people, and Montgomery, Alabama is also prejudiced towards the elderly. This is a form of exploitation and abuse. It is a form of corruption. The only reason this happened is because the courts want to take power and control over my mother's estate and assets and money. This money is then being used to pay judges, it's being used to pay lawyers, and it's being used to pay for and fund a corrupt elderly care system. For as soon as you take the love factor out of the equation, then you have corruption.